Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 50 Shades of Tay. I'm Taylor Gonzalez, and you guys, there is a very cute, very exciting movie coming out this Friday, January 31st, and it's called Dogman from Dreamworks, based on the children's book series. I am lucky enough to have the composer of the film, Tom Howe, with me. Tom, how are you doing today?
Very well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. I know everyone is so excited for this film. It just looks really cool. One of the things I love about it is the animation style. I just think it's so unique and a fresh take on these characters. Very excited to see it. I was looking over your IMDb, and you have worked
Yeah.
on over 100 film and television series between Ted Lasso, Shrinking, now Dogman. That is crazy to me. Does it feel like 100 when you hear that, read back to you?
Well, it's funny. I mean, no, but it's one of those things you start a bit like kind of I don't know, building a house or so. You kind of put one brick down, it's just a brick, and but over time it just sort of turns into a lot of different things. Um, but I've been doing it quite a long time now, and it's yeah, suddenly you realize you've done more than 100 things. I mean, the thing about that is you'd think having done 100 that it would get easier, but that's not really the case. Every time I start, it's just as hard as it was on the first time. So
Gosh.
that's a little bit depressing. But yes, it's quite a few projects to have worked on. So
Ah,
been very.
incredible. Well, with Dogman releasing this Friday, I was wondering, do you have any plans to celebrate?
Yeah, I'm actually going to got a screening tonight,
Oh,
um,
nice.
which I'm going to with sort of cast and crew, and it's a little bit obviously because of the fire, it's a bit more muted than it might have been. But we all wanted to get together and watch the movie at the very least, and kind of say hi to each other. So we're doing that tonight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it again because obviously I've watched this film hundreds of times.
Mm.
Uh, and when you're scoring it and record, even doing the recording, I've got the picture up in front of me. But I haven't now seen it since then. So yeah, I'll see it with fresh perspective because when you're right in it, you notice every little thing about volumes of things or sounds against effects, and but I'm hoping to go and watch it tonight purely as a fan rather
Yeah.
than as who's working on it. So I'm
Oh,
looking
very
forward to.
cool. Well, with your work in over 100 different television series and movies, how did you get your very first start as being a composer?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there's a few. There's probably many more than I don't know about, but there's a few different ways to get into this game. And I was doing a lot of commercials in the UK and also doing a lot of songs. But then I did a lot of string arrangements for other people who were doing songs, and I assisted a couple of composers. And actually, weirdly, I mean, I'll give you a short version of this, but really, my first proper job came about because um, I followed a few different composers, and I do a bit of kind of freelance work every now and then for them, doing some arranging or and things like that. But one of them was having a sale of. He sent an email out, and I happened to be. I'd done one small thing, and I had a publisher as a result of that. And for reasons I don't know, because I definitely didn't warrant it, I was on their Christmas email list to invite me to a party. And this composer, who was a very well known composer, he hijacked that email to list some gear he was selling.
Oh,
And I didn't need any of it, but I found the cheapest item I could find, which was a patch bay, which I never used. And I bought it. It was about 50 quid, which probably in today's money is probably I don't know, a couple of $100 sort of thing. But I went along and I met him for lunch to pick up this patch bay. And then we got talking, and I said, look, if you ever need a hand with anything, that would be amazing. So he then got me to do some bits and bobs. And after a bit of time, he got offered a job on something he didn't want to do, which was a 90-minute documentary. And he asked me if I wanted to do it. They had no money, and it was not a wasn't something that was going to be seen by masses of people. But obviously, I jumped at it, and I did that. And the director of that then went on to do various things, and he took me along for the ride. And one of the things he went on to do was the Great British Bake Off, and that really kick-started a sort of career of sorts in TV in the UK, because that show was so popular, still is, but it was a massive show. And so I then got hired to do a show called Four Rooms, a show called Taskmaster, which is still running now as well. Jonathan Ross show, all these shows that came from working with the director. He's a guy called Andy Devonshire, and he's a very clever guy, and he also did The Apprentice and things back in. So he's a very and so really that was kind of how I got my way. I have also assisted various composers along the way, doing things, and and I think that's a pretty standard route to kind of a, get your foot in the door, and B, it's a funny one, this, and I don't, this may come out wrong, and I hope it doesn't, but when you I never studied film music, I studied music, right? So I know nowadays there are specific courses for people to learn about picture and things, but I certainly, when I started, and even now to a degree, I sort of just feel what I think is right, and obviously with conversations with directors and things. But the advantage of working for somebody who's at a much higher point in their career is that you learn a lot about, not necessarily about the composition side. I mean, you do learn about that, but also there's a lot of things that you need to do to make a score come to life, and actually get from a computer to an orchestra, and then be in sync. And I mean, things like kind of I mean, the picture's changing all the time, but just to get it onto the stage, you've got to make synth masters into Pro Tools from what you've done. You need to obviously get the MIDI out to a copyist, and it's got to get put onto paper. And there's, how many musicians are you going to use? How much time do you need with the orchestra? Now, you can obviously guesstimate these things, but sometimes if you don't really know what you're doing, you might overestimate and you put way too much time, or you underestimate, and that's not good. I've been there, and you're then really trying to rush through. But by being with somebody who's done that a lot, can get a feel for, over time, of how to kind of do those aspects of the job. So that's how I got in, and then from that, as I said, I had a couple of other things that then came through by being on. As soon as you're on something successful, you're if you're lucky enough to be, then other things, good things usually come from that.
Yeah.
That was it. But it was literally, I just randomly decided to buy a bit of gear that I didn't need to meet somebody.
Oh my gosh. No, that's awesome. That's a really cool way to get your foot in the door. How did you get involved with Dogman specifically?
Well, Dogman, I mean, again, this is, so I met when I moved to Los Angeles. You're trying to obviously find your way into film and TV, and meet people and do various things. And I had many meetings with Universal, who are Dreamworks, and nothing really came of them as such, but they were lovely people, and they did put me forward for a few things too, but I just didn't get them. And then they had they redid a bunch of silent films from the 20s, I think, which were all black and white, and they were long. I mean, they were like 70 minutes, and they asked me to rescore one, which actually is quite hard. I mean, I've done things like Shaun the Sheep before, where there's no dialogue, but you've still got a ton of effects and explosions. This was just completely silent for 70 minutes, and it was, and with the text on the screen every now and then. So I did that for them, and that seemed to go well. And they then hired me to do a Minions short, which I did, which went out before, I think, before Despicable Me 3 or 2, or one of the Minions or something. And then after that, I got hired on a movie called Polite Society, which was a Focus Features film, which was Universal's Focus as well. And then they hired me on Book Club 2.
Oh, nice.
And then they put me forward for Dogman as a potential, so it's sort of building that relationship over a number of years, and being trusted, I suppose, with different levels of seriousness, if you know what I mean, in terms of and then being competent enough to then move up a tier each time. So and forming relationships with those guys and what have you. So they put me forward for Dogman. Then the director Peter and the producer Karen, they were in London visiting the animation department. They were obviously seeing different composers, and they came over to my studio, and we talked, and I played some things. And Peter, the director, is very very musical. He actually went to the Berklee College of Music, so we also jammed a bit, and we got on very well. And then I didn't know where, and then they said you're hired, and that was kind of it. So I was off.
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah,
What would you say are some of the inspirations that you have when you came up with the score for this film?
it's honestly it's almost all my inspirations. I mean, it's got a I mean, there's a soundtrack coming out on Friday, and it's kind of bonkers, really. I mean, there's almost stuff. So there's bits in there. My big influences really were Ennio Morricone and Henry Mancini in my personal, um, composition. I loved all that sort of stuff, and John Williams and things. And this is, I suppose, has elements of that old, Henry Mancini, Lalo Schifrin type vibe early on, because it's cops and stuff, and so it felt to me like a kind of 70s, um, kind of cop thing. So there's a bit of that going on. There's then some mad kind of uh, sort of mouth trumpet, dog panting, that kind of stuff, percussion, and that slightly Ennio reminds me of, not of him as such, but in terms of he was always doing kind of slightly mad things. And then there's obviously some straight sort of there's some big band stuff which sort of sits in that Henry Mancini world, I suppose, and then a bit of kind of straight orchestra, which is for the emotion, and some piano and things like that. So there's sort of quite a lot of different elements in the score,
Oh,
which is
very
neat,
cool.
what's on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it all come together. When you were working on creating this score, what did you have to work with? Did you have storyboards or did you have animatics? Did you have like the completed picture?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny, on animation you can be on for a very very long time versus a kind of live action thing. And so to start with, I had some storyboards and some short excerpts. And there's a couple of bits in the movie where I had to write something ahead of them animating it, because they needed it for a specific somebody playing something on screen, or there's a TikTok dance and they needed that as well. So I got little bits of those ahead of time without us seeing a whole cut, and then some storyboards, and we're just talking about characters. But then probably about a year before I started recording, I got a cut of the movie that was an animatic, but it wasn't very finished or detailed. And and then it got better and better after that, and they would cut it down and shape bits out and improve things and take whole sections out and that kind of thing. But I probably had something about 12 months before I actually had to record, and then it just changed and got better and better, really, as the and then towards the end of the process, I actually had Peter, the director, came back to my studio, and he hung out for about a week, and we, as I was kind of finishing it off, really, so that I could get direct feedback from him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool collaborative process. Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite song that you composed for this film?
I've got there's a probably a couple of different bits, to be honest. I mean, there's a kind of a resting PT montage in the sort of first part of the movie where it's just really bonkers and fun and energetic. And then as I like the ending as well, really. It's very sort of emotional, and kind of wraps the whole thing up, really.
Oh,
So
nice.
the two very very different sounding cues, but they probably, yeah, probably my favorites.
When you signed on to work on this film, were you already familiar with the source material, or did you go back and read some of the books?
I did go back and read them. I had read them to. I've got four children, so
Oh,
I was quite familiar with the books. They've been around for a while, obviously, and they're hugely popular. But I did go back, and then I bought the whole, all of them, and I started reading them again to my youngest. I read them to my, um, I've got boy, boy, girl, boy, and I'd read the
okay.
books to the elder ones, but I hadn't read them to my. So we started getting into them after that.
Oh, that's so fun. Are they excited to see the movie?
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is so fun. So since this is a DreamWorks film, which is one of my favorite studios, I love DreamWorks. Like, I think that they're really pushing the boundaries with the animation style, especially if you look at their last few movies, like The Wild Robot and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I just think it's just gorgeous animation style. Do you have some favorite DreamWorks films?
Yeah, I mean Shrek,
Hmm.
um, How to Train Your Dragon. Um, these are, I mean, they've made some absolute classics um over the years. I mean, they just, and as you say, the quality is just so high. I think I mean Shrek for me was a real well, there were four of them, weren't there? I think maybe there's going to be a fifth, isn't there, at some
Hmm.
point? But there that was just such a good um overall series in terms of how the characters developed and went through, and how I always think that when animations really work well, they can be aimed at children, but they've got enough content in there for adults to have in
Right.
jokes. And I think that that's what those movies did so well, is that they entertained everybody,
Yeah.
not just ones. And I think Dogman has that too, so I'm hopeful that it'll be liked.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm really excited for it because, yeah, like you said, like I think DreamWorks and I think Pixar both do it really well where the kids will like it because it's bright, it's colorful, the music, the characters, but then adults will like it because there's, messages or humor that the kids might not get. So I think, yeah, perfect balance of the two. I have
Yeah.
two nieces and I'm sure they're gonna love Dogman. They, love all these kinds of dogs and cat characters. Do you know if there are any plans for a physical release of the soundtrack, like whether it's on a vinyl record or a CD or anything like that?
I don't actually, but I ought to find out. But I know it on Friday. I'm pretty sure it's just on streaming platforms, but I don't know if there's vinyl to follow or something like that. I doubt there's going to be a CD, but there might be
Hmm.
some vinyl.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for a vinyl. I know they did one for The Wild Robot, and it just had like the gorgeous artwork, and it was like a really colorful vinyl. So fingers crossed the Dogman gets a vinyl release because I would love to add it to my collection.
All right, I'll check on that for you.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to know. So as I mentioned earlier, you've worked on over 100 projects. Is there one that stands out to you that you're most proud of?
um, well, I'm proud of them all for different reasons. So, well, not all of them actually, but I'm proud of a lot of them for because the thing that's so for me, I love about composing to film and TV um, is that every experience is, as I said, is totally unique, and that a keeps it interesting, b it keeps it terrifying because you can't really rest on your laurels. But how I approach, say, um, shrinking or um, Ted Lasso or something, or it is totally different to how I'd approach this or how I would approach, and each have their own set of problems to figure out. So I remember I did a series for Amazon called Daisy Jones and the Six, and the the music initially everybody wanted guitar music, because it and to sound like it was in the 70s, and I tried that and it didn't work because the show itself was about a band, so you had all their music and then you had a load of needle drops from the 70s. So when you had the score sounding 70s too, it was like too much for the viewer in terms of just information, and also you couldn't really distinguish what was what. So in the end I ended up going with a kind of pretty modern minimalist ambient sound, so that when the score was there, it was very much background supporting emotion, but it didn't get in the way of anything else. And so that obviously is, I mean, that's a very background ambient score, but it's exactly exactly what I think that show needed.
Hmm.
And the filmmakers seem to agree, is with, Dogman or Shaun the Sheep or something are completely different to those. But I suppose things I'm really, um, I like certain things usually because they've um, been important in my, so the Bake Off to me was a big deal because it really helped me get going in my career, and it's so universally liked that everywhere I go, people,
Hmm.
I haven't met anybody who doesn't have a good thing to say about it. And now there's a lot of shows that are sort of fairly similar really, but the at the time that came out, most of the shows on TV like Hell's Kitchen and Dragon's Den and Master Chef and all these things, they were very dark actually. there was a lot of people being voted off with big beats and very kind of like aggressive strings and whatever. And Bake Off was like this light breath of fresh air. So it's sort of, and I like things that do that. Ted Lasso does that too. It's a very positive, hopeful kind of vibe, and I enjoy doing that a lot. I like doing things that make me smile. Um, Musically, I've done a couple of David Attenborough series for the BBC in the last few sort of 5 years. I've got one coming out at Easter actually,
Ooh.
and I'm from a musical perspective, I'm pleased with those. If you know what I mean, as in that sort of challenges me very much as a in my musical chops. But I'm very. This has been a highlight for me, Dogman, for
Oh,
absolutely sure. So it's a sort of well, the people have been. I've probably. I mean, I've been lucky in this regard. I haven't really had many things where it's all been very tense and very, um, been worried about being replaced or being, or worried about how it's going to turn out. But this, honestly, without, and if you get to interview anything else from the film, but it's been a complete joy from start to finish. The moment I was hired, I had a great afternoon with Peter and Karen when they came to my house, and then after that, it's just been lovely. Honestly, genuinely. And when we recorded, they all flew over to London, and we recorded for 6 days in the hall at Air Studios, and um, it was just like hanging out with friends and family. I mean, honestly, it was fantastic, and they're just such nice um, and brilliant people as well. I mean, I think I think the film's really good, and just pleased I could be a part of it. Really.
yeah, no, that's great. And it's great to hear that you guys, have that friendship because it really does translate when it's a stress-free environment and people get along. It translates to the project. Like I'm telling you right now, if it's, people aren't getting along or they're not very friendly, you can tell when the product comes out. So I'm happy to hear that this film, everyone, was a pleasure to work with and was very friendly and you guys got along. That's really great news to hear.
Yeah, and I think in my experience, the really successful things from from a commercial point of view, and B from a creative point of view,
Mhm.
are usually where the things I've done where it hasn't gone well, not from my perspective, but the overall, is when you have somebody who doesn't really trust anybody to do anything, and they try
Mhm.
and manage every single bit of the process. But when people are kind of, well, I've got that person doing the DP is going to do that, and she's brilliant, and the costume person, he's brilliant, whatever, that kind of thing. That you're trusting people, you're hiring them because you think they're good, and then you trust them to kind of, doesn't mean people don't have opinions, but I think it makes the whole thing much more enjoyable when you can kind of uh, people are trusting you to do stuff rather than trying to kind of pigeonhole you in a certain direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
no, I totally understand. But Tom, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me, especially during the week of the release. So thank you for being here. And in the meantime, where is a good place for people to follow you if they want to keep up with all your other upcoming projects that you have?
probably IMDb. I'm not so good on social media. I'm going to get better. That's my New Year's resolution. I post every once in a blue moon on Instagram, but not really. But IMDb probably.
All right, yeah, that's great. And yeah, congratulations on the release of Dogman. And also, just as a fan, thank you so much for all the amazing scores you've given us over the years because I was really like blown away when I was looking at the list. I was like, oh my God, I love this and I love this. So it's just like, thank you for all the incredible music you've given us because without your music, a lot of these projects wouldn't have the character or the personality or be as memorable. So yeah, just thank you for all of that.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for making time.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, have fun tonight and have a great release week and congratulations.
Thanks, Taylor. Take
Have
care.
a good day. Bye.
Bye.